Hello my guys, welcome to the 8th mid-year book freakout tag that I have made on this channel. So not only is this a time to reflect on the first half of the year, you heard correctly, this is my 8th time making this video, which means that it is my 7-year booktube birthday. If everything goes to plan, this will be going up 3 days after the exact date that I posted my first ever video on YouTube, which was indeed the mid-year book freakout tag. So if you guys are unfamiliar with this, it is honestly, if this wasn't the first video that I ever made, and also like a low-key celebration of my booktube birthday, I probably would maybe not be doing this tag anymore. But it is essentially a series of 13 questions that just recap the year, everything like you've read that was notable, and looking forward to the second half of the year. Now, I gotta admit, answering these questions gets harder every single year when I am struggling to find books that I'm rating highly. So we're gonna do our best. I will, if you are a creator and with a channel of your own and you would like to do this tag, I will put the link to the creator, which was, I think it's Chami, and also all of the questions in case you guys want to do this yourself. But starting off with question number 1, which is the best book that I've read so far in 2024. Once again, if all goes to plan, the last video that you will have seen on my channel is my best books of the year so far, but that is by month. So it's like my best book of January, my best book of February, etc. So a book that I don't think will have been mentioned in that video because it was the only month so far that I've had 2 5-star reads, which was May, and that is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. I loved this and I truly did not expect to. It's a YA fantasy romance. YA, typically not my thing anymore. There are some outstanding ones that I find, although I would argue that this is a little bit more of a new adult. It truly blew me away. Like, when I started to enjoy it, I still could not have predicted that I would have given this 5 stars. So this one is following a witch called Rune who has to turn in her own grandmother to the witch hunters when this revolution rises up that overthrows the witch queens. She does this like with her grandmother's permission because there has already been a tip that her grandmother is a witch, and if she does not turn her in, then Rune will also be executed alongside her, which her grandmother obviously doesn't want. So this is 2 years on, and since then Rune has found out that she's actually a witch herself, and she has dedicated these last 2 years to finding and freeing witches that are about to be executed. So the love interest in here is actually a witch hunter himself called Gideon Sharp, and not only is he a witch hunter, he is actually the captain of the witch hunters. So this actually has a little bit of a fake dating situation because Rune is looking for a witch called Seraphine that was close to her grandmother, and she arrives just before the witch hunters have caught her and taken her into custody. So she is then trying to get close to Gideon because she knows that he will have the information that she needs to find and release Seraphine. And on the flip side of that, Gideon has a theory that Rune is the Crimson Moth, and so he is trying to get close to her so that he can confirm his suspicions. Now, when I started this, it felt like a very typical 2015 to 2018 kind of YA, so I didn't think that I was going to gel with it, but when the romance started kicking in and we had the banter between the main characters, we had like the mutual pining, both of them really wanting this relationship but not admitting it to themselves because they knew that they were only pursuing their own agenda, and when that was over, the relationship was going to have to come to an end. I also really enjoyed how kind of vulnerable Gideon is and how unsure of himself. Like, he comes off really aloof, but that is more out of insecurity than anything, and I really like how these two were quite supportive of each other in the relationship while still having their ulterior motives behind the scenes. Would highly recommend if you're a fantasy romance fan because I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this one. The next question, question number 2, is the best sequel that I've read so far this year, and this is a book that you will have seen in my best books of the year so far video. The reason why I included this one as number 1 for my best book of the year is because this is the only thing that I can kind of count as my best sequel of the year. This one is A Little Hatred by Jo Abercrombie, and it is actually the first book in the Age of Madness trilogy. However, in the First Law universe as a whole, it's book 8. So this is as close as I could get. I was looking through the list of all of the sequels that I've read, and actually out of all of the things, even things that are sequels to things that I really enjoyed, they've been disappointing compared to the books that came before them. The First Law series by Jo Abercrombie is a grimdark series. It's comprised comprised of 2 trilogies, 3 standalones, and a collection of short stories. So this trilogy is like the last 3 books in the first law that have been published to date, at least. He hasn't said that it's definitely over, but at the minute there's nothing really in the works. So I can't really actually give you a synopsis of this one either, because this is essentially a culmination of all of these little plot threads and political machinations that have been happening over the last 5 books that have put these characters in the positions that they are. Now, a lot of them come from positions of privilege. They're members of royalty, members of nobility, and we are currently in the industrial age in this world. And what we are finding is that we are having a big political and a big social shift that is destabilizing the social standpoint that the world is currently in, that our characters are familiar with, and they are trying to just get some sort of stability at this point in this world. This is obviously the first book in this trilogy, so it's more about the setup, where I feel like the upheaval, the social upheaval, is really going to happen in the sequels. But the thing that I really liked about this compared to any other book in the First Law world is that all of the characters in Joe Abercrombie's series are incredibly flawed. That is just standard, but a lot of the characters in the first trilogy and the standalones do come with the caveat like that you may like elements of them, but they are all pretty horrible people or have done horrible things at some point. Whereas these guys, these are pretty fresh. They're pretty young. They've only known peacetime. So while they have some not great qualities, like some of them are pretty privileged, ignorant in their privilege, some of them are incredibly sheltered, they're not inherently awful people. They haven't really had enough life to do truly terrible things. And so I found myself rooting for them. I found myself emotionally invested in their stories, and that's not something that I've really encountered with Joe Abercrombie's books before. And I know that this is going to be terrible for me later down the line, because I know that these characters are going to either end up being terrible people or they are going to die. And with me now being emotionally invested in them, that is pretty dangerous, but then it's also that level of emotional investment which makes me rate things 5 stars. Question number 3 is, what is a 2024 release that you have not read yet but want to? And for that, I gotta go with Empire of the Damned by J. Kristoff. This is one of my most anticipated releases of the year because Nevernight by J. Kristoff is one of my favorite series. So this is the sequel to Empire of the Vampire, and I feel like the reason why I haven't picked this up yet is because was I disappointed by Empire of the Vampire? Maybe, because I love Nevernight so much, and while I do really like Empire of the Vampire, it wasn't as enjoyable as Nevernight for me. So while I was really anticipating this, the fact that I didn't love Empire of the Vampire is what has put Empire of the Damned on the back burner. That being said, I still really want to pick this up because I did enjoy Empire of the Vampire. I don't know if you've got my point yet, but this series is about the last of the Silver Saints, so the last vampire hunter, and it's told in like a Name of the Wind style, I believe. I haven't read Name of the Wind yet, but I want to. And it's told in 3 timelines. So we have the present timeline where Gabriel has been caught by the vampires and they are about to kill him, but they want him to tell them his life story first. And then we have his origins, like how he joined the Silver Saints, as one timeline. And then the other one is him pursuing the Holy Grail, which is like the greatest achievement that he had in his career and his life. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? I do have a video, I think at the end of June, I posted my anticipated releases for July through December, and I think out of all of them, definitely among the top of my most anticipated is The Ending Fire by Sarah L. Arifi. This, I always say it, it's one of the best fantasy series, like new fantasy series that I've read in recent years, and it's following 3 characters who are living, I think it's an island, they're living on an island where everybody is separated by the colour of their blood. So 20-ish years before the start of the story, this group of rebels stole red-blooded babies because red bloods are the nobility, and they planted blue-blooded babies in their place. Now, a lot of those babies were killed when they were found, but not all of them. And the reason why they did this is so that they could raise the red bloods as blue bloods so that they could see the oppression that was dealt to the lower classes from the red-blooded elite, and then train these children to compete in a series of trials which picks the leaders in the government, in like the different areas of the government of this island, and then along the line change things for the better. So we are following one of those red-blooded children who is struggling to survive since the rebellion has collapsed because not everything went as planned. We are following a blue-blooded child that was not killed when they were put into a noble home because they essentially, their parents wanted to save face, and also a translucent person in this world as well. So I love the world building. I love that book 2 really built upon book 1 and expanded the world so much, and I'm hoping that the ending fire is going to bring us to a super dramatic, really well executed conclusion. Question number 5 is, what is my biggest disappointment of the year so far? And if you've been around a while, I don't think it takes a genius to know the answer to this question, because that is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. And if this was any other year, if this was any other SJM release, then this would have been in the number 1 question slot for what is my best book of the year so far. But I'm just so upset with how this series turned out, if I'm being honest. House of Earth and Blood is my favorite book of all time. I still stand by that. I adore that book, and every other installment in this series has been such a big disappointment. This was not good. Like, I think that objectively it just was not good, and it is absolutely not Sarah J Maas's finest work. I think that the plot in here was a mess. I think it was anticlimactic. I thought that the characters were acting out of character in ways that was actually just really disappointing to see, the way that they were treating each other. As well as that, like, it just wasn't very entertaining. Like, I found it quite boring in parts as well. Sarah J Maas has been my favorite author for quite some time, and at this point I don't think that I would even say that she is anymore, because of how kind of upset I am about this book. Like I said, have been a big Sarah J Maas fan for such a long time. So I'm hoping that in the future, with more releases from her, we see the quality of the books kind of rise back up to what they were in the beginning, through Throne of Glass, through the ACOTAR trilogy, with so many elements like found family, like epic battle scenes, really good character development that I really love. I hope that we really see those elements come to the forefront again. I don't actually have a lot of faith at this point, but I do hope that we get to see it. Question number 6 is, what is my biggest surprise of the year so far? And this is a book that I really thought that I was gonna hate. I was doing a vlog where I used a spinner wheel to pick books for me to read under 300 pages. So literally everything under 300 pages that I owned was on that wheel. And I was very, very upset when Pretty Little Liars by Sarah Shepherd came up, because I thought that I was gonna hate this. This series, I have 6 books in this series, and they're ones that I've collected over the last 10 years. Like, whenever I see them secondhand, I pick them up, or I did in the past, and then I just never read them, and I thought that I'd outgrown them. So when this came up, I really thought that I was just going to end up unhauling the whole series, because I assumed that this would be badly written, and it isn't. As I'm sure you're all aware, because this is a very popular TV show, this is following a group of girls whose friend goes missing. A couple of years have passed, and they are starting like a new year at school when they start to receive threatening text messages from somebody who signs their messages as A, and they then band together again, because they've grown apart a little bit, to try and figure out who A is and why A is blackmailing them. So it's like a YA mystery series, and it has so many red flags, so many problematic elements, but it is so entertaining. I also think that this is like a perfect time capsule series of media that was presented to teenage girls in the early 2000s, which does feel extremely nostalgic to me, because I was a teenage girl in the early 2000s, and so I really like it for that. And I'm also really enjoying the wild ride that this series is providing, because I am currently reading through this series now, like 1 book a month, and I can't lie, I'm having a great time. Question number 7 is, who is my new favorite author that I've either discovered or is a debut in 2024? And I don't really have an answer for this. I haven't read anything by anyone that I haven't read something from before that has blown my mind and would cement them as one of my favorite authors. Also, to be one of my favorite authors, I have to have read multiple things by them and loved all of them. So it can't be books in the same series either. If they are authors that write series, it would have to be multiple series that I've really enjoyed. So I'm tentatively putting Joe Abercrombie in for this, and that is not because he's one of my favorite authors, but because I had such a bad time with these standalones and the short stories in this world. While I did enjoy the first trilogy, I was genuinely shocked when I liked this first installment in the second series. And at that point, when I started this book, I assumed that I wasn't going to like it, and I also had kind of written Joe Abercrombie off and was like, okay, when I'm done with First Law, I'm probably not going to pick up anything else by him. But this has kind of restored my faith, and now, providing that I also enjoy books 2 and 3, I am willing to pick up more things from Joe Abercrombie and explore a little bit more of his work. Question number 8 is, who is my newest fictional crush? And I've had a couple over the years so far, but one of the ones that I did really enjoy is Dr. Prem Verma from Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma. This is a contemporary romance. It's the first book in a series of like companion novels called If Shakespeare Were an Auntie, and this is following Prem and Karina, who end up in an almost fake dating situation because her father has said that he's selling the house that she grew up in that was her mother's passion. Her mother's passed away and he said that he's selling it and that he is retiring, but he's not willing to sell it to Karina because while there is a pot of money set aside for her and her sister, it is only to be used if they're getting married or if they're already married and buying a house. So she ends up going on a date with Prem, not knowing who he is, and the day after, her sister, who is an influencer, has a interview on a TV show that Prem hosts, which is about heart health because he is a doctor. And when she goes on that show, when she accompanies her sister, she realizes that he doesn't believe in true love and that everything that he said to her on her date, she is perceiving as a lie. So she kind of goes off at him on TV, and this causes a lot of investors in this new community center, this new community like hospital that he's trying to open, to back out. So then he is trying to get the investors to have confidence in him again, and she is trying to convince her father to give her this money. So they end up kind of in this fake dating situation that ends up turning into a real relationship. Question number 9 is, who is my newest fictional character? And this character is from a book that also has a great love interest, which would have been a great candidate for my newest fictional crush, but that is Tisana from the War of Lost Hearts series by Carissa Broadbent. So the first book is Daughter of No Worlds. This is following a girl who is a slave and she ends up buying her freedom from her master, but she has to leave her best friend behind. So she then joins this order of magic wielders to try and get the help to free the slaves in the place that she's from, and obviously also free her best friend. So when she arrives there, they tell her that she needs to become an apprentice, and the only person available to take an apprentice is Maxentarius, who is a fire wielder who is also a little bit of a recluse and really resists training Tisana. Now Tisana is badass, and my favorite thing about her is her resilience. I also really love that she is very supportive, like in the romance in this series. They're both very supportive of each other, and typically in a fantasy romance where we would have things like communication issues and self-sacrifice, where danger that like threatens the love interest comes up, instead of taking it upon herself to kind of save the day at a risk to herself, she actually communicates with the people around her, and instead of making these grand self-sacrifices, accepts the help of the people around her to shoulder the burden. And I did really love that about her. I have only read book 1 so far, but I'm hoping that that continues on throughout the rest of the series, and if it does, then Tisana will remain one of my favorite fictional characters of the year. Question number 10 was a book that's made you cry. I don't think I've had one, so I actually don't have anything in for this question. I am pretty sure at some point throughout the year I have teared up at something, but I looked through my entire list of books that I've read and I honestly just could not tell you what it was. I probably did tear up, if I'm being honest, I probably did tear up somewhere in House of Flame and Shadow, and not just at how bad that it was. I also read Brittany's memoir pretty early on in this year, and while I don't think that I teared up at any point, I was genuinely like shocked and horrified at some of the things that she's had to endure during her life. So this one's definitely an emotionally impactful one, even though I don't think I actually cried at it. Question number 11 is the flip side of that, and that is a book that has made me happy. I read a lot of like dark, depressing stuff, can't lie, but I do like light little almost palette cleansers or more uplifting things in between those heavier or more dense reads. So for this one, I've gone with Lore Olympus Volume 5 by Rachel Smith. This one is Volume 5, obviously, in the Lore Olympus series, which is a Hades and Persephone retelling. It is a webcomic with really gorgeous artwork. It is following the romance of Hades and Persephone, and while that element of it is generally quite wholesome, this also doesn't necessarily shy away from the darker themes that are represented in Greek mythology, such as like domestic abuse, child abuse, sexual assault, all of that kind kind of stuff. But what I do really enjoy about this is that in modernizing the Greek gods while still preserving those darker elements, this has made some of the characters in here quite relatable and quite funny. So even though it does deal with some darker themes from time to time, it's also generally quite wholesome, heartwarming and uplifting. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book that I've bought this year so far? And once again, I looked through all of the books that I've hauled and I don't have anything that stands out as being so much more beautiful than everything else that I've purchased or received throughout the year. But something that I do really love is the gold editions of the Empire of the Vampire series by J. Kristoff. These ones are the Illumicrate editions. I have all 4 special editions of this series, all 4 UK special editions at least, and I do genuinely really like the gold, but the thing that steals the show for me is the really intricate edges on this one. And like I said, I do have a lot of editions of this, but these ones are by far my favorites and definitely my most prized of the 4 editions that I have. The next question is, what is my favorite book to film adaptation that I have seen this year? And I don't always see any, to be fair, but this year I have. Is it the best one though? I actually could not tell you all of the things that I've seen this year, but I did really enjoy The 3-Body Problem, which I have just gotten the book and I haven't read it yet. It is by the same people that made Game of Thrones, and it is following this group of scientists that are noticing that all of the science in the world is going wrong. Like, all of the big reactors aren't having predictable results, which really they should. And as this continues to happen and other strange things start happening, they come to realize that there is potentially something behind this and then have to kind of like figure out what to do about that. That's pretty much all I can say, because having not read the book, I know that like season 1 of a TV show will sometimes spoil things that you don't know going into a book, so I don't want to say something that I don't know is an integral part of the early synopsis of book 1. But while it isn't the most compelling thing that I've ever seen, I did really enjoy it. I am definitely intrigued and I'm really excited to see season 2 when that eventually comes out, which will probably be in a couple of years. And then the final question for this tag is, what are some books that I need to read by the end of the year? And my answer, as it is every year, is going to be all of them. I have so much that I need to read. While I do have a lot of book club stuff that I do, I also like to have a little bit of spontaneity in my reading, so I don't know outside of those book clubs exactly what I'll be reading in the year. But I have a few sequels, like a few priority sequels that I would really love to read before the end of the year. One that I don't own is Waking Gods by Sylvain Nouvelle. This is the audiobook series that I'm listening to in between listening to installments in the Wheel of Time series. So the next one that I need to pick up is Waking Gods. I didn't enjoy Sleeping Giants as much as I thought that I was going to, but it's definitely a really good listening experience. I also desperately want to continue on with the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir, because I read Gideon the Ninth at the end of last year and I absolutely adored it, so I'm hoping that I can fit in Harrow and then potentially Nona. And then while I didn't really enjoy book 2 in the All Souls series by Deborah Harkness, I would like to continue on and read book 3, because I hear that like it does pick up and that book 3 is much better. So that was everything for my 2024 round of the mid-year book freakout tag. As always, I'm not going to tag anyone, but if you've seen this and you want to do it, then feel free to say that I tagged you. Down in my comments, let me know, what book has surprised you the most in 2024 so far. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish Candle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.